Welcome to Code Savvy Presents, a podcast about computer science, technology, accessibility, and inclusion.
So my name is Chris Eckhart. I am a software engineer. I primarily focus on Rust, the programming language. Been doing a little bit of full stack recently, but I've been using Rust for about maybe about 2 years now. And my background is more focused on Python and R and scripted languages. So Rust was really kind of the first compiled language that I really got into. I do a little bit of Java, and yeah, prior to being a software engineer, I worked in finance for about 7 years. So I did a bit of data science there, and yeah.
What was it that got you started using Rust?
Yeah, so it was the data science work I was doing. I was doing a bit of simulation, and Python and R are fantastic languages for data science. And Python, it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of languages. You can do a little bit of everything with it.
Right.
But I kind of got to this point where the performance of those languages just wasn't adequate for what I was trying to do. I did a very rough test, and I figured that what I was attempting to do was going to take about 2 days to run in Python, just because I was doing something very iterative. It's just something that Python isn't really set up for. And I'd been exploring Rust on the back end. I'd heard a lot of like really good things about it. There's a very fervent fan base. If if you know anything about Rust, usually there's very enthusiastic people behind there, and I can say I'm probably one of them.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So I had been looking at it sort of on the side on my own, and I really got interested in Rust because it promises a couple things. It promises really high performance, but it also promises like if it compiles, it runs, but also it runs without memory issues. And so when I was looking at performant languages, C and C++ come to mind a lot. Those have been around for, I think C is at 50 years now. But I knew enough about C to know that if I did something wrong, something really bad could happen with memory. And I didn't trust myself. I again, coming from a little bit more of the Python and data science side, that aspect of Rust was really appealing. So, I felt like I could use Rust to achieve the same level of performance that I could with C, but I wouldn't have this like secret foot gun that I might pull out and accidentally use at some point. So
it was a little safer bet.
Yeah, exactly. Like coming into that low level of programming, I wasn't afraid that I was going to mess something up with Rust, and Rust definitely delivered on that. I wrote I wrote programs. There's an aspect of Rust called the borrow checker, which effectively is part of the system that ensures that your program is memory safe.
Okay.
And notoriously, you got to fight with that as a beginner. I definitely did that. But when I got a program that ran, I could run it confidently. There's a lot of, it's easy to interface between Python and Rust. And I was able to interface between R and Rust easily as well. So, yeah, it was a great high performance language to get into if you weren't 100% sure of what you were doing.
Which, that sounds perfect for me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about both common use cases and cases where you wouldn't want to use Rust.
Sure.
So like what does that look like?
Yeah. What's been interesting to me about Rust is I think the use cases are fairly broad for a language. And by that, I mean, there are things that you would normally use C for that you can use Rust, right? Like a lot of embedded development, microcontrollers, robotics, that sort of thing, or you'd use C++ or something like that.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's also great for building things like REST APIs, which you would normally think of, like web backends. You normally reach for either Java or Python or something like that.
Yep.
So it's been really interesting, just the breadth that you can use Rust for. You can do all sorts of things like compile it to WebAssembly so that you can actually run it in the browser. It will interface with JavaScript and TypeScript. I know there's a very strong game development community out there. You can do some GPU programming. I know there's an effort behind there. So yeah, it's
pretty robust.
Yeah, like you said, it might be easier to describe what not to use it for.
Right. Okay, let's talk about that. What are some cases where it would not be the best option?
Yeah. It's things like rapid prototyping, where you know where you're going to throw it away. Things like exploratory data science. People are still feeling out, what's Rust's role in machine learning and things like that.
Okay.
But I'd say Rust, one of Rust's downsides is that it takes a while to write, right? One of the super powerful features of it is that it requires you to be explicit. It requires you to effectively prove the correctness of your programs in a couple of different aspects. You don't always need that, right? Like sometimes you just kind of want to throw junk together and maybe you're like, maybe you're testing a front end and you just need a quick API or something like that. Maybe you're like trying to wrap your head around linked data structures, right? Linked data structures are inherently memory unsafe unless you do a lot of things to them. Rust will force you to make them memory safe. Okay. So it's not really a great language for kind of learning those fundamental data structures. Rust really feels like I am writing this. It's going to be bulletproof, and I'm going to have to take the time to, like I said, kind of prove to the compiler that certain aspects of my program are correct.
Which then I'm guessing would make that like super workhorse level code. Like it's going to work and it's going to work over and over and over again.
Yeah, there have been, I can't even remember now how many very large tech companies have come out and said, we're really going to lean on Rust for sort of our core tech. Or we strongly recommend, like Facebook strongly recommends that, Meta strongly recommends that their CLIs are written in Rust, right? It's code that once you write it,
and it works.
It works, and it just continues to work. It has a really good dependency management system. Again, it's not the fastest thing to write. You're not just going to throw something together, which happens a lot with things like CLI tools, but it's going to be reliable. So yeah, great for critical operations.
Right. What are some of the coolest projects or innovations that you've seen people use with the language, with Rust?
These are things that are cool to me.
That's why I asked you.
Database technology. There's a lot of really cool, innovative database technology that uses Rust. Again, people are really leaning on that rock solid sort of performance oriented aspects of Rust. It's in the Linux kernel now. Okay. Microsoft and AWS are using it for cloud technology. There's a lot of really powerful REST API frameworks out there that are just really performant. Like I said, there's a lot of game dev out there, which is really neat. I don't fully appreciate everything that they're doing, but it looks awesome. So yeah, lots of projects. A lot of them come down to just making really, really performant things that we need. So I think that stuff is awesome. I'm sure there are awesome projects out there that I'm not aware of, but yeah.
If somebody wanted to start using Rust as a part of their career or their kind of development package, are there
Mhm.
certifications or any kind of degrees that you recommend, or what does that pathway look like?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm not aware of any sort of certifications. Um, in terms of degrees, one of the things that I really like about Rust is that it's very computer science focused. Um, I've heard people say that most languages are written by or developed by software engineers, and Rust is developed by computer scientists.
Okay.
Um, so there's a lot of concepts in the documentation and how the language is put together and things like that um, that are sort of textbook computer science concepts. Um, so one of the really neat things about getting into Rust and learning Rust is that you learn so much about computer science. Um, so I don't know, if you have a computer science background, it probably helps you learn Rust. Learning
Or
Rust,
vice versa. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Learning Rust definitely, if you don't have a computer science background, you kind of like gain exposure to a lot of concepts and ideas through using Rust. So Rust is in a sense, like a little bit of an education in itself in computer science. In terms of like getting into Rust as part of your maybe part of your career or starting to use it in work and whatnot,
Yeah.
um, it really comes down to, in my opinion, practice. There's there's a lot of kind of tutorial books out there. The documentation behind Rust is fantastic. Um, so there's the famous Rust book, which I think is actually called the Rust Programming Language. It's the official book of that everyone starts with how to learn this language and kind of the new concepts behind it. There's also a video version um, by a YouTube channel called Let's Get Rusty, which is pretty interesting.
Okay.
Um, they just turned that book into a series of YouTube videos. Um, but I think it just comes down to getting comfortable with the language. Like I said, there are new concepts in there. Rust has a very strong type system that you need to get used to. There's no null value in Rust
Okay.
like there are in other languages. That takes some getting used to. Um, you have to explicitly handle errors. So I won't name all the different things that you have to get used
Yeah.
to, but it really just comes down to doing projects, I think.
And just practicing with it and getting
Yeah,
familiar with it.
and finding small projects that maybe you can use at work, even if you don't normally use Rust. Like I said, CLI tools are a great way to get started. Maybe you just want to automate some of your workflow. You can do that pretty easily in Rust, and it just gets you used to working with a borrow checker, working with a type system, things like that.
Cool. So kind of on the topic of working on small projects and kind of just getting your feet wet and trying things out. Let's talk about Rust MN for a minute and the
Yeah,
group that you are running. Can you tell us a little bit why did you start that and how did you get that going?
yeah, it's it's very informal. It kind of consists of a meetup group slash Discord channel slash website. But a group of us in the Twin Cities who are just either interested or using Rust get together. Normally, we just talk about Rust. We do have a couple projects that we are working on. We're sort of working through one of the embedded Rust tutorial books right now. You got these little microcontrollers, things like this. That
Is that no, that's a microbit?
This is a microbit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we're just getting together and kind of working through different projects that you can use that for. We've been meeting for about a year. Um, you know, there were groups in the past, a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. After COVID, everything's kind of reset.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, we're still at the point where we're trying to figure out what people need out of the group, but really our goal is to help people uh, learn Rust. Um, you know, honestly, a big part is to just have fun and get together and talk about
Well,
Rust.
yeah, and
But we
maybe
also want to,
find like-minded people to work on projects with, and
yeah.
yeah,
But we also want to encourage people and help each other. Rust is a pretty complex language. There's a lot of parts to it, and it's also rapidly evolving because it's so new. Um, so we help each other keep up to date on what's going on, um, and also if there are companies, this is kind of a informal goal, but if there are companies that are looking to use Rust in their projects, we want to be a resource to say, hey, you know some of us have kind of gone through this. We use Rust in our day to day. This is kind of what the workflow looks like. These are things to look out for.
yeah,
These are some considerations if you're trying to port some code over from a different language, things like that. So
yeah. That's awesome. What are some of the ways that people can get involved with your group or help with your mission? How do they
yeah,
get in touch with you?
uh, just come to one of our meetups or join us on the Discord channel. You can go to rustmn.org. And that'll have links. We also have a number of resources that we have posted, just helpful, books and tutorials and videos that we found around the internet that can help people get started. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little information with us today about Rust and
Yeah, of
your
course.
your passion for it.
Yeah. We can talk about this for a long time.
Right, right. No, that's exciting. When is your next meetup? Do you have anything scheduled for what's coming up in 2023?
Ooh, I think it's Monday,
Okay.
actually. So yeah, the last meetup we had, I want to say it was in December, and like I said, we've been working on this thing. Um, there's a lot that you can do with these things, so I think we have at least another one of those. At this upcoming one, we'll probably figure out, do we want to continue doing embedded stuff? Do we want to look at WebAssembly? Things like that. So we've kind of been planning it as we go along, but it's always more fun when everyone's got some projects to hack away at, and you can help
And
each other.
get help with.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big part.
Yeah, we actually just launched a program called the Bite Size Challenge, which is working with the microbits as well, going into schools and teaching kids how to use those. So we're
Yeah.
kind of starting them out with, like the block programming language that they have for microbit, but
Yeah.
eventually, like those kids might come join your group eventually,
Yeah.
so they can program in Rust.
Yeah, it helps to be familiar with it, and it's such a great chip because it has so much stuff built right in.
Right.
So
No, they're really cool.
yeah, and then it's just the next step is Raspberry Pi or Arduino, and
Yeah.
we'll all bring as many microcontrollers as we have. So
Just to try them out.
yeah, just try different stuff. So it doesn't have to be a microbit.
Right. You never know what you might be able to come up with.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, again, thank you for the conversation, and we'll link to your website so people can find you and hopefully get involved with your group.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Val.
You're welcome. Code Savvy Presents is produced by Code Savvy, a 501c3 nonprofit organization committed to making computer science accessible. Visit us at www.codesavvy.org.